what being oversubscribed looks like is there's 100 buyers and there's only capacity to look after 10 of them. People are going to miss out. And if you imagine a restaurant that's in that position where they've got a queue up out the front, they're not terribly worried if someone says, gee, your hamburgers are expensive. They say, well, go somewhere else. And therefore they can maintain profit, they can maintain a high price, and therefore their assets are used efficiently. So the being oversubscribed leads to having healthy revenue per employee. Being undersubscribed means you end up with low revenue per employee. So if your restaurant's empty and you've got people standing around, naturally you have low RPP. And if you're balanced, if roughly speaking your business is in equilibrium, you've got the right amount of customers, you haven't got a big lineup, but you've got a good amount, and it all seems be normal, then you tend to be able to pay your wages, pay yourself a little bit, and the business kind of, drifts in one direction or the other. Let's go and have a look at what you can do to tip the balance of being oversubscribed in your favor. Because if you can tip the balance of being oversubscribed in your favor, what happens is you end up getting higher revenue per employee and going further and further up the scale. So the two things I want to share with you is campaigns and being a key person of influence. Both campaigns and being a key person of influence will actually drive you nice and healthy, at least into that lifestyle business. When you want to cross the desert, there's typically more to it than that. So if you want to cross the desert and build a performance business quickly, typically what you need to do is a couple of acquisitions. Typically what you need to do is a bit of funding, either debt or investment. But if you want to cross the desert, you'll need to do a little bit of extra. But let's talk about campaigns and being a key person of influence in the context of at least having a lifestyle business. So campaigning is about winning business in phases rather than winning business one at a time. Campaigning means that we break a process up into creating a market of people who are very interested in what you do, and then switching gear and selecting customers or selecting an outcome. So you can imagine a campaign to raise investment. You go out and talk to lots of potential investors. You shortlist it down to more investors than you need, and then you hopefully play them off against each other a little bit, getting good terms on your investment and getting the investment that you need. So there's phase one, which is making a lot of people interested in what you do. Phase two, selecting who you're going to work with. If you think about a campaign for winning customers, phase one would be about having hundreds of people showing interest in what you do. Phase two would be making the sales. A great example of that would be Glastonbury. Glastonbury spends 9 months of the year only allowing you to pre-register for tickets. You have to pre-register. They get 400,000 people to pre-register for tickets to Glastonbury, and then they give a special date where you can buy the tickets, and they sell 100,000 tickets all in a very short space of time. So that's an example of campaigning. So if you want to ramp up a business, what most businesses do is they just simply have usual operations. So they just simply operate the business. So they're out there talking to people, trying to make a sale, What campaigning businesses do is they do a bit of that, but on top of it, they add 3 or 4 campaigns for the year, and they actually do some exciting campaigning around their operations as well. So they have base level operations plus 3 or 4 campaigns for the year, and that helps to maximize the efficiency of the assets. What we look to do as one step is to create a campaign-driven enterprise. So with the companies we often work with, we establish what is your baseline performance month on month, and then what 3 or 4 campaigns will you run throughout the year to boost performance on top of that. And we use a campaign timeline where we say planning, build up, get oversubscribed, release capacity, follow up with sales, do the delivery, and then campaign again. Give you an example of this with a company called Facebook. So they launched as The Facebook, and when they launched, they did a campaign only to allow Harvard students to join. And that was their first campaign. So they focused on getting people to pre-register, and if you didn't have a Harvard EDU account, they only allowed you to pre-register your interest, but then they allowed Harvard students to join. They then did Harvard and Stanford, they did the Ivy League, and then they did universities, and then they campaigned and won market upon market upon market. So they broke up a big picture into campaign milestones along the way. So there's a great skill that fast growth companies have called campaigning. I really recommend that you look for ways to work into your business models, aggressive campaigning, quarterly campaigns, or at least 3 campaigns per year that really aggressively go after a particular target or a milestone. The second advantage that is a really standout advantage in today's market is positioning yourself as a key person of influence in your industry. That's where essentially you're not just a voice for your business, you're a voice in your industry, you're someone who's speaking at conferences, you're perhaps putting blogs up online, you're sharing information, you're sharing insights, but you're becoming known as a key person of influence in your industry. And that creates a good uplift as well. If you look at the UK income distribution, it looks like that. So what you have is a very small number of people earning extraordinary amounts of money. If you break it down industry by industry, you also discover that the very top end of an industry earns a lot more than the average. If you take a big firm, like a big accounting firm or a big consulting firm, the partners are on seriously, high incomes, and then there's a lot of people who are on average incomes. The key people of influence earn exponentially more. Since the 1980s, being in the top 10% has been worth 300% more than it was in the last 30 years. So since 1980, income at the top 10% rose 300%, while staying almost the same in the middle and going backwards in the bottom 20%. So what it really says is that in every industry, you've got these key people of influence who attract a lot more income and a lot more opportunity. And it makes sense when you put it in perspective of technology. So with the context of technology, all of this technology like YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn essentially take a personal brand and an opportunity and a message and leverage it far and wide compared to what we could 10 or 20 years ago. So 10 or 20 years ago, if you were an accountant who had a strong opinion on a particular accounting issue or business performance issue, you might have been able to go networking and talk to a few people and maybe write in a little local paper or write in a gazette and get thousands of people to listen to your message that you had to say. Today, if you feel strongly about something, you can podcast about it, blog about it, put YouTube videos out on it, and suddenly you've got tens of thousands of people who are engaging with a message. Sometimes those people are the people who are really deeply searching for that message, and therefore you become very highly valuable to that niche community. There's a great example that I was sharing before about a company called Spider.io. 7 data scientists, PhDs, got together and they just wrote blogs for a year, and they were extremely detailed blogs, thousands of words per blog, all about flaws within Google's algorithm and understanding how Google's algorithm was perhaps skewing certain results. And it was an incredibly minute, focused, little detailed problem, and they just blew it up and blogged about it and talked all about it. Hardly anyone read the blog, except for top Google engineers, who then elevated up to their management team, who elevated it to the M&A team, who came and bought the company for millions. And they said, if you guys care so much about this problem, come and work for us. We'll buy your business and you can go and work with us. So what happens is that by sharing a lot of content and sharing information, those people who value that information very highly, wherever they are in the world, can now find you and place a high value on what you do, leading to you being oversubscribed.